What do you want to tell me about your heroes?
There goes my hero.
I thought you hate the Foo Fighters.
I don't hate them. I wouldn't say I hate them. I don't hate them. I think, yeah.
I
What do you
think that
think?
I think the drum part of Everlong spawned some very funny internet videos where some new drummer would be learning to play the hi-hat part,
Hmm.
and they'd be drumming with two hands on the hi-hat, and then they'd see the video of the way Dave Grohl was playing it. It was one hand for the same speed. So Dave Grohl played it with one hand, and they were playing the hi-hat part with two hands, and they're like, "Oh my god, I have to play twice as fast." What?
Was he doing
He
like,
was just doing one hand like this on the hi-hat, and any number of young drummers are like, I can play that song, but they're using twice as many hands as was used on the recording.
yeah. So apparently, also on the kick drum part of Smells Like Teen Spirit, that's not a double bass pedal.
Just has fast feet.
Yeah. He is a ridiculous musician. He's a metronome. Uh, as a drummer, obviously he beats the crap out of him, which I love. That's probably trait number one that I admire in drummers. But he's also a metronome. He can do it in time.
I something somewhere I saw that the biggest trick of a like a pro musician, the thing that you can do that is the hardest thing for anybody to actually handle, is keeping time silently across a long stretch of time. So, if you have to, you're keeping time and everything's going fine and you're on the beat, and then there's a break for 2 minutes and you need to come back on time 2 minutes later. Like crazy hard to do.
Yeah.
I'm not close. I should probably practice that. I feel like that would be a good use of time.
Well,
And it's
for
fat.
what?
It's fast. You only have to do it like once in a while. Just because it's like there are certain. We talked about this yesterday. There are certain functional things that you need to do to be proficient in some cases in an instrument, in some cases in any instrument. So if what you need to do to be proficient, one of the things to reach proficiency is to have a certain sense of time. Like more important than reading music, particularly if you're playing guitar or drums. But you need to like having a sense of time, having knowing the fretboard on the guitar is important. You don't have to know the names of all the notes, particularly if you're not playing with other guitarists, but you need to know, like you need to understand how the notes relate to each other, and you need to be proficient. Like you need to be familiar with the fretboard. You need to be literate in the fretboard.
I cannot read a single note of music.
There's no what do you play drums and guitar? Do you play anything else? Do you play piano? Do you play tuba? I mean,
Tuba.
Guitar. I don't know if this is true for all the stringed instruments, but guitar, great. You can read music. Well, you still have to learn. Literally still have to learn a second notation after being able to read music in order to play guitar. If you're trying to do it from written music,
Yeah, I think I don't know. I don't. That's one thing I don't have a position on. If you can't, I mean, I'd love to know music theory because I'm sure there's a lot of math and physics involved, and that would be interesting. But there hasn't been a need for me to do that to this point, and there are other more important or more interesting things that I want to investigate, like becoming fluent in Spanish.
music theory is to music as calculus is to physics. It is part of the function. The two only exist because of each other, and music will exist with or without music theory, just as physics will exist with or without calculus. But having a language in which to communicate the things that are otherwise not able to be communicated is very important for certain parts of the practice. Now, if you're in a drums, guitar, bass band, you really don't need to know the theory. You're practicing the theory by playing it. You don't need to also know the theory.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I like people who are, or I'm respectful and in awe,
I don't think you're in
whatever.
awe.
I'm not in awe. I'm not in awe.
I don't
For
think you're in
sure.
awe of people
For
that read music.
for sure, not at all. But of people that want to be excellent at their craft and know that aspect of it.
So
Here's a
your ability to drop into a songwriting session with people that you've never met before, never played with before, and you don't even know what kind of music they play is going to be dramatically higher if you have a good handle on music theory,
sure,
right? So if that's the thing that you're doing, then that is a thing that is a key tool to the thing you're trying to do. If you're going to play with your own band who wrote the songs and are able to communicate to each other, having a different language and talking about, I don't know, whether the ninth is included or not, and whether that's not super helpful. Especially if you don't have, do you have, I mean, what's the lineup? What's the Clyde lineup?
so I was going to tell a story. It's guitar, my guitar, rhythm guitar, me,
Yeah.
lead guitar. I have a lead guitar story, drums and bass, and then I bring in pedal steel. Surprisingly, this guy is like 34 years old, as an absolute badass. He's the age limit for pedal steel guitar is like 55. If you're if you're under 55, you do not know how to play pedal steel guitar. It's the hardest instrument, hands down, that there is to play. It's ridiculous. This guy's young and he's awesome. I'll do that, and then we'll do keys or like the two records ago. Really talented multi instrumentalist who played drums on the record. Nick Lehman. He's the most talented musician I've ever played with. Did synth and organ and piano and guitar and drums, and like he rigged up BBC News. This at the end of one of the songs, rigged up BBC News, ran that through his pickup on his electric guitar, and then had that as an effect going out at the end of the song when there's a bunch of mayhem. And it was one of the coolest things that's ever happened in studio. Anyway, I have a guitar story for you. So the guy, he's really, I mean, my first lead guitarist. His name's Josh Hawkins. He's a Mensa guy, and really, really smart, but like, is happy to tinker. He's not,
Yeah.
he's not a PhD or anything like that. Just really smart guy, and really well versed in theory and knows the guitar technically inside and out. And when I was 22 years old, 23 years old, and he was the lead guitarist, and we gelled. I really feel like I learned to write songs with him. But he would go in this place in rehearsal where we'd be working on new material, and he would, we'd stop, sometimes not like, he'd stop like not real friendly, cordially, congenially, whatever. He'd stop and he'd be like counting frets and talking to himself, and he'd look up to the ceiling and then be like, that doesn't work. That chord doesn't work. He's like, it technically doesn't work. They have an expression. Point is, they have an expression for me. Uh, I like to sneak in chords in a progression that don't work theoretically,
Yeah.
but do sonically. So there's always, on every probably second or third song, because I write them all. They have there's a Terry chord. There's a Terry chord in there.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's what I'm thinking of when I think
He's the guy
about.
that's like, this is the quote wrong chord.
Correct.
And
He's like,
if you had more hours on your hands, or if you were just a ghost of him and you guys were mirrors of the same person, you would just prove to him the way that it does work.
well, it does sonically and it stays. He's like, I mean, I guess it sounds good, but it doesn't work.
Right, but if you change modes, or if you rework the entire song around that one Terry chord, it is much like physics, right? Like if I tell you the apple falling from the tree doesn't work because the calculus is wrong, Okay. I mean, the calculus does not add up. It's shorthand for saying the the way that we've laid all this stuff out and the way that expectations are set, this does not align with that. But there is no chord that can't be made to work technically. You just have to convolute the technical definition of work to where it becomes, terribly complex for no reason other than to fit the thing that obviously sonically worked.
Yeah. I've been so fortunate, man. I'm always eager to say things like this, but I've told them all. I've been so fortunate that like I have played way above my weight with musicians. Like I've had the pleasure of playing with real pros, like just people who are really good musicians, maybe not session players because that's not what they want to do, but
Right.
could. I've been really fortunate in that respect because I'm a hack musician. Like the instrument that we've talked about this, the instrument for me is just a tool to write a song.
Yeah.
It's all it is. And I'm a hack musician. I'll be the first to say it. I write well, but I've had just, and I don't like try to fit in with that. We go into it knowing that I'm the odd man out in terms of master of his craft and, and craft being instrument. I've been very, very fortunate.
So how do you make that work? If you're golfing with a foursome and you're 30% worse than the next person there, that's not fun at all. But how do you make it work in a band?
I am good with tone,
Hmm.
and the arrangements are interesting. I use, it's not like I'm playing an album full of major chords.
Hmm.
Um, and so the arrangement is interesting that I bring in, and they're well written songs for what they are. Like it's at this point, it's my, I am what I am, and I write what I write, and it's kind of known that that is what it is.
You ever gonna try something new? Not with Clyde, but separately.
I want to. Yeah. It would still be with Clyde. It would still be under Clyde. In fact, we started to do this. And then one of the guys that I play with just moved to Texas. So it got shut down, but we were going to do something electronic. Still might. We should talk about this.
Send me stems anytime.
I want to
Send
play,
me words, and then I'll make music to go with it. It'll
I
go
want
like
to,
this: beep boop beep boop beep boop beep boop beep boop beep boop,
whoa.
wah, beep boop beep boop,
I,
wah.
I want to play bass in this project.
Good,
Yeah.
good. I mean, it's. Uh, I don't have any more comments about bass players. Do you have any heroes who are bass players?
No, I don't. And it's interesting. I don't. I was thinking about this, and the reason I was thinking about this, I don't want to be one of these guys, but I am reading an interesting book by an author named Thomas Carlyle. You may or may
Mm.
not. It's called "On Heroes and Hero Worship" or something. Um, I have no heroes. I've never had a hero. Possibly as a young person, I played baseball my entire life, and I really thought highly of Nolan Ryan, but I never thought of him as a hero. Like I've never really had a hero where I'm like, where I feel that have some sort of, I don't know what we would define as hero, but I don't know that I've ever had a hero. What about you?
Ooh, do, 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 do. I just think of a hero as somebody that is your personal superhero. Like who would be the Batman of my life or the Superman of my life? And I don't think I have one of those. I mean, there are people I look up to, people whose ideas I respect, people whose words I respect, people whose actions I respect. But I mean, I think I missed the boat, kind of, because the time when you would have had heroes is before you're going to get old enough to be jaded and disillusioned
Cynical.
and nuanced and cynical. And like, so if you're thinking about heroes in term, flip side, the conventional wisdom, right? You never want to meet your heroes because then you'll see them for being a person, or that it's just not what you expected, right? And the point of the idea of a hero is in service of the person who has the hero more than it is about the actual person who's doing the heroism. And a lot of that comes down to, I mean, that's reflected in superhero stories too, right? Like Batman, he's just trying to do a good job and there's always more crime. he can't clean it all up. He can't save everyone. And this is his brooding, you know, cross to bear, that he can never do enough. Right. And that's so meeting an everyday hero, or like growing up and realizing that actually anybody you would have put on a pedestal like that, like we're all just out here putting one foot in front of the other and making it through the day one way or another. And that realization, um like if that comes kind of early, or if you don't have a hero before you hit the point where you're feeling more, not even more negative about life, but just more nuanced about what people are, then like I think my time for being a hero is kind of passed. Like who, I don't mean this to be silly sounding, but like who are the candidates here? Like, am I going to pick political figures? Am I going to pick war heroes? Am I going to pick, you know, the fireman who rescued the kitty from the tree? Like I don't even, I almost can't even compute the question, who's my hero in my mind.
Okay, well, let me get you started with an example. And I don't consider this person a hero. I think maybe there's a double click needed on what the definition of hero is, and does anybody really have a hero? But somebody that I legitimately respect, knowing full well that there are probably warts and ulterior motivations that I'm not aware of. Have you ever heard of the movie The Insider? The Insider. Al
I've
Pacino.
heard of it, but I don't know it.
Al Pacino, your Crow, Russell Crowe. Um, it's a story about a PhD, a biochemist who made his way to one of the big tobacco companies. I think it was
Hmm.
Brown and Williamson. Um, and basically he was the whistleblower that brought down big tobacco.
Yeah.
And he did it. He took the job seemingly. This is the narrative. Like, I had some email exchanges with him a long, long time ago. I guess at some point he would have been considered a hero, but he took down big tobacco. He seemingly went into the work, into the position, knowing, that this is not what he wanted to do. But like a lot of us, he took the check. And it got to the point where, he got disillusioned, blah, blah, blah. And he blew the whistle on big tobacco. Ended up being a high school chemistry teacher, and he's still alive. I don't know where he is, but the movie The Insider was based on him. I have significant respect for people like that. Again, I don't know the true backstory. There are always probably details that aren't in the public domain that may make me question the story. Who knows? But I am drawn to that type of story, like the person who was gonna, you know, presumably did something noble for the sake of the common good, even at significant personal expense, uh, possibly death threats, that sort of thing. So I'm drawn to that story, was drawn to him as a person, but wouldn't say he's a hero.
Well, okay. So the point of a hero, the point of having a hero is that they're, a distillation of things that are your values, right? So if you value something about the nobility of that, the self-sacrifice of that, the not going along with the crowd, these are things that are Terry's values reflected in that hero. So then if I'm just going to give you like cop out answers, Bill Gates giving lots of malaria nuts away. He's a hero in that way to me, because he's looking for pragmatic and practical solutions to big problems that affect people that aren't, just him. And I like, malaria net better solution than, one laptop per child, right? Like it's actually thinking in terms of what is needed to solve a problem. And it's unglorious, right? And kind of uninteresting as well. So I like that. I like Warren Buffett because he's been consistent in his message over a very long time, and the message hasn't changed. The message is internally consistent. The message is unintentionally contrarian, right? Like the message of the answer to all of your problems financially is mostly to buy and hold is contrarian because there's an industry built up around not managing your money that way. So,
Can
but it's
I
yeah,
can I I've got a Buffett story I'd like to get your take on.
yeah. Well, I don't
This
know that much about the guy, right? So some of this is the picture I've painted of the man that I
the
think is Warren
narrative.
Buffett. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And I don't, we should probably source this article and maybe we will, and I'll get to that. But so, one of the big tenets of his shtick is I live in the same house I've lived in Omaha for however many years. My wife gives me $2 a day for breakfast. I get a sausage McMuffin, drink Coca-Cola or Diet Coke, whatever it is. I'm worth all these billions, but I still live incredibly modestly. Dot 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 also has 54 private jets. I just found that to be awesome. Like the narrative with him is what I just described. And I love that. I love it. Married to the same person. I envy that. I really envy that. We've had that discussion. But then also, can you really, if that is the case, if you own 54 private jets, I mean, can you claim I I don't buy expensive clothes, I, drive the same car, I live in the same house.
Well, his frugality is pragmatic and consistent, right? So if it's more of a everything for its purpose and nothing beyond its purpose, right? That's if I'm in the Buffett narrative, that's how I hand wave this away. Like the private jets are for the sake of getting from place to place as efficiently as possible. The one thing you can't buy, no matter how much money you have, is time.
Time.
So optimizing your time is being frugal with your time. If like as a human being, you can only occupy so much space at a given time. So having a gigantic house serves no actual purpose. Now, okay, so if I say Warren Buffett is, I'm not going to say he's my hero. Let's say he's in the running for would be a contender for hero if I was if I was giving more stock to the concept, right? Uh the like I don't want to live my life the way Warren Buffett does, but I find that the way he articulates how he lives his life is useful and applicable to me, despite the fact that like I don't want what he has. And so distilling advice from somebody like Warren Buffett, where he is able to talk about how he does things, and then that applies to how I can use that information in my little world with my things that I want. So it's stuff like no one's going to define what you want for you, right? Like this is a subtext of a Warren Buffett message, which is, another side of that is no matter how many private jets you have, no matter how many private islands you have, no matter how many mansions and fast cars and whatever else, if those are not the things that bring you fulfillment, amassing more of them won't make you more fulfilled.
For
And
sure.
I don't think I think as much as I don't think Warren Buffett shies away from the narrative that he lives in some ways, more frugally and more humbly. I also don't think I don't think he would tell you that that's because he's made a lot of choices to be that way. I think he would tell you that that's his preferences. These are the things he buys, the things he likes. He doesn't buy the things he doesn't like. And it's almost like if you want to live in a tiny shack and that's the thing, like what brings you happiness is being in a shack in the woods, no amount of money is going to make you not want to live in a shack in the woods. So if you like having the same house where you're familiar with it or whatever other reason, like that's the thing that makes you happy. So do that thing.
I can see the logic and the consistency of the utilitarian value of the fleet of private jets. It's just, come on.
I don't want to have a bazillion dollars and be thinking about where to pinch the next penny as the only thing I'm ever thinking about. That doesn't appeal to me in the slightest.
Yeah.
I don't want to be thinking about money all the time.
Yeah.
My financial objective is to not be thinking about money that much.
I am 100% in that camp. Like at my detriment, I can't be stock guy. Like the people that just obsess over, like I just can't do it. I don't care enough. I could
Yeah,
probably do that and be further down the net worth path. I just don't care. I don't care. I should. Uh,
maybe,
I
maybe
don't
not.
want to. I don't want to. I don't want to live that way. I refuse to live that way. The stocks and indexes and this and that. A lot of people do very well for themselves. Fun fact: the vast majority of billionaires in the country are money people, hedge fund,
Hmm.
you know, stock people. They're not. There's a misconception or a false narrative that they're most of the billionaires are like Mark Cuban or Musk, but that is very false. Most billionaires are money people.
You know who else I don't want to be like? You can guess. Take a guess. Who else don't I want to be like?
You're probably going to say Musk, and I'm going to have a bone to pick with that.
No, I don't want to be like Mark Cuban.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Here's why. Here's why. Like I
He's an Indiana University guy though, and I've got to
credit where credit's due.
credit where credit's due.
No, so I have a very narrow Mark Cuban story, and it makes me laugh. And it was just like really stood out to me. So I got this ad probably on LinkedIn for it was a LinkedIn supplied paid course or something like that. And it was Mark Cuban with a very expensive looking bookcase behind him on a Zoom call with pretty bad lighting that had been not well digitally retouched. And I'm like, you got all this dang money and you said yes to that LinkedIn class that you're going to do a Zoom class for LinkedIn. And I'm like, what part of your life made you think I should totally do this? Is it the part where you feel compelled that you've done all this stuff and now you have to like share it with other people so that you're quote unquote giving back? Is it the part of you that just can't stop? And when someone throws money at your face, you just accept it? Like
Or maybe it was a favor to someone.
it, yeah, but man, I don't want to be in a situation where I'm like I want to use the money to not have to do those favors. You
You
know
know
what I
what
mean?
else? You know what else I could never do? Have you seen the? I think it's a Microsoft IPO, or it's like a Microsoft um, company meeting back when. What's the
I
Oracle
know which one
guy's
you're
name?
talking about.
And they're
Steve
dancing.
Ballmer
Steve Ballmer, and he's like,
and Bill Gates.
all of them.
They're like super pumped.
Yeah.
Bill Gates jokes about that now. Like there were this in the past 6 months, there was an anniversary of that launch, and I want to say he probably tweeted or does Microsoft have a Twitter competitor? Anyway, he put a message on their teams that said, and it was like sometimes you create a world beating product, other times you make a video that chases you around the internet for 25 years. So like he's been, I guess, good natured ish about it.
You know what their response, the overwhelming popular response to questioning that video would be?
No.
If you've got the kind of money they've got, who cares?
Yeah, that's true. Also, I mean, Steve Ballmer's talked about the video too, where he's like, that's just how I am. I'm just amped up about stuff. And people who worked directly for him are like, yeah, I mean, he just is that way. He's full of energy. It's great when it's great. It looked a little silly on that video, but like that dude always has that level of energy about stuff.
Yeah.
So, if that's what, if like he's being genuine.
So where do you come down? I feel like this is really controversial, and it has nothing to do with Twitter or political stance. But I think Musk should go down as a great American hero. I think he should be somebody that the country looks up to. But
Elon Musk is cut from the traditional cloth of, the Ubermensch, where you put all of an entire society's, values and conflict and everything else all into one person. And I mean, he's going to go down in history. Details of that yet to be seen, but like it's like emperor grade,
yeah,
mythology.
well, but that shouldn't be. I don't think there should. You can a person. I feel like a person can disagree with whatever of the peripheral stuff they want to disagree with. Fine, but I think in terms of he's the type of person that civilization is built on. And there's no joke. That's the type of person, not only in terms of, returning value to shareholders and people who work for Tesla, X, SpaceX, the multitude of companies that he's founded, but the ecosystem of companies that have benefited from that as well, plus the sort of higher ideals um, that the company is trying to problems versus the problems that they're trying to solve or solving, and the higher ideals that those problems, the outcomes they yield, like these are foundational things that civilizations are built on.
So I think that, and we're gonna get back to collectivism versus individuality or individualism. I think that the lightning rod character, or the lightning rod overperformer, is kind of a critical role,
Yeah,
right?
but hold on. Stay with that thought. But why is Musk, who's eccentric, I think that's probably the worst quality that you can assign to him. You may disagree with political or whatever. He's eccentric, but doesn't appear that he's Wolf of Wall Street, and a lot of Wolf of Wall Street billionaires that nobody even knows and doesn't care about. And I mean, would if one of those people went away, would there not be 10 people in line to take their positions? Who's
Are you a Steve Jobs fan?
You know, I don't have an opinion. I
Yeah.
don't. I'm obviously clearly I use Apple is all over everywhere. I don't really have an opinion. Yeah, I don't know. I know anecdotes and stories about the way he managed the company. Here's what I'll say about Steve Jobs, and this isn't ideologically consistent with everything we talked about last week. He had the whole arc of working from his garage, and he's a tinkerer, he's a loner. There are, you know, we're all dichotomies, so he probably had some downfalls on the other side of that. But our and this is what Carlyle's point is. Um, Disagree or agree, it doesn't matter. It is what it is. That there are very few people. I'll just say people. There are very few people historically that civilization and progress and modernity as we know it today have been built on their backs. And I think Steve Jobs is one of those people.
I think that is a rhetorical argument that has merit and some room to defend, and I think that you see it consistently over all of human history. Right? You see the
For
argument,
sure.
you see the examples. This great person notion, right? So I think that if not, in coming from a place where I can't disprove that theory, I will instead say that the consistency and the how much that concept permeates everything, like that indicates that it's true. Like these foundational, civilization changing individuals do make a huge difference, and they matter a lot, and they are rare, right? Like that thesis, I think, is clearly either near universally embraced and somehow wrong in a way that we can't prove yet, or it's near universally embraced because it's right. You know what I mean?
I
So
think that
those are the choices.
I think the one thing, and I'm doing this in real time, trying to figure out like what is it that I respect in people. I think the one thing if we've talked about from that I've talked about, I appreciate Wigand, Jeffrey Wigand, Musk, Steve Jobs, these people. I have a real healthy radical respect, and I will say an admiration for people who are risk takers. I know a lot of people who are intelligent, but are safe. And it's the risk takers that civilization's built on. It's the risk takers, I feel like, that have made America the greatest experiment ever. And I believe that it's people that are willing to passionately pursue, the story. And this is not, I'm not a Musk fanboy. I don't want to give that impression. But I am. I don't think there's been anyone in my lifetime that has combined the intellect, the idealistic thinking, the risk. Dude made a whole bunch of money out of PayPal and buried it all in the companies that he was working on. And I don't think those things, maybe people have given close in those three respects, but they certainly haven't. The end result hasn't been the high impact multi-company output that the guys delivered.
Here's part of why I struggle with heroes, and I'll use him as the example, but it applies pretty universally. So there is, everything you're saying is correct, and I find myself wondering if for every risk taker who did all these things and made it, define made it however you want to. That could be Musk, that could be 10 degrees lower than Musk, but for every one person who made it by taking the risk, the world is a system, right? Or system of systems. So for everyone that made it, how many were chewed up and spit out along the way, and how much of the exceptionalism of the one who made it, or the few who made it, or the one who made it in some particular domain, how much of that was because of the risk taking, and how much of it was, there was a pool of people that took a similar amount of risk or had a similar amount of, like, you know starting, money or mental capital or whatever, and of that pool, the pool got winnowed. And being in the pool is admirable, but making it to the top of the pool, maybe not as much about what you did, and maybe it's more about, somebody was going to end up at the top of that pool, given, the set of people that could have been there. And that's not about any individual. That's about the nature of risk. So when you're talking about high risk, there are always going to be a higher number of failures. So being an outlier means that you and others took outsized risk, and the flip side of that risk is basically invisible non-winners. Like, I won't call them losers, but it's the invisible non-winners that nobody knows about, nobody cares about, and it becomes this very one-sided thing. And it's easy to explain away, well, they got there due to ability, and anybody if they, ability and gumption, and then that drives the institution of hard work, and a moral work ethic and everything else, which has these systematic benefits to everybody who's a workaday grunt working for Elon.
Yeah, man. I these conversations happen intellectually and conceptually,
Hmm.
and I there's a real palpable aspect that 99.9% of people miss in these conversations, and it's the you go about we go about our day, and we do our work, and we have our family, and that is what we do. But those people are there's the stress that you wake up with in, okay, how am I going to make payroll today? How am I going to, that is not like, oh, he took risk and it's too easy to conceptually minimize what it actually means to have walked that path and be successful at it. And I'm not talking about money people. I'm money people. This is my take on that. My harebrained hillbilly Kentucky take on that is, for every one money person that makes it, there are 15 waiting in the wings to do the exact same thing. That's my take. There's a never
Hmm.
ending supply of people who can be shrewd with markets and strategies, and they're charismatic, and they can separate people from their cash and earn a big check.
Hmm.
That to me is learnable, very learnable. A lot of people can do that. There aren't a lot of Steve Jobs and a lot of Elon Musks, and I would throw a guy, all of those type of people, that walk that they've been on is unique. There are a lot of risk takers. And I think when we have conversations about this conceptually, it's easy to minimize the sort of tangible, like what that we're all safe in our bed every night. And yeah, we have stresses at work, but we don't have that level of stress. And combine that, you got a marble game going in the
There's
background,
a
huh?
marble game going in the background. It's stopping.
I
Now, oh,
like
it's
it.
starting again. I'll edit it out in post. I won't edit it in post.
No, just let it roll.
At least the HVAC's not on. I agree with you, and I think that anybody who wants to be rich should think more about what they're actually looking for.
So I don't hear. Can I make a point and then finish your
Yeah.
point? I don't think you get it. You get into money guy wealth by just wanting to be rich. Like you can do it that way.
Mm-hmm.
You don't build Tesla by wanting to be rich.
Exactly. The reason Elon Musk built Tesla and SpaceX and the Boring Company and it's because he can't stop. Like the number one thing driving him is compulsion.
I don't know that. I don't know him. I think a person could make the case for that, but is compulsion second or third, and the desire to do great things is first.
I
He
mean,
wants.
at what point are those two intertwined though? If the only thing you want to do is do the greatest thing, and you find yourself striving for the greatest thing all the time, and you get closer, but because you've got big aspirations, that target for what the thing is, it's all there's always another next thing to be chasing. Like
You know,
like if SpaceX were to successfully land on Mars in 2 years, which is not going to happen, like no one, Elon Musk isn't going to stop. Like he's not going to be like, we did it. We're hooray, we did it. We're done. Hands clean. Let me kick back. And like he's not going to retire. He's not going to relax. He's just going to go until he slams into the wall of death and like his life ends. There will be no slowing down at any point other than he is physically unable to continue on that grind, as the kids say.
I wonder what the comparisons are. Obviously, I trust 60% of what I've read about history at this
Mm-hmm.
point, maybe half, maybe less. But you know the narrative of Howard Hughes. You
Yeah.
know your perception of Howard Hughes.
Wasn't that a Scorsese movie too? The Aviator?
Oh, I don't know. I haven't seen that, but I do. There's an interesting story about Howard Hughes where he was contracted to pull a nuclear sub or a Russian sub or one of our adversaries sub. We couldn't do it. We didn't have the technology, so we contracted him to pull this sub off the bottom of like the deepest part of the ocean floor or something like that. I don't know how that outcame, but the narrative around Howard Hughes is that he was weird and eccentric, and you know I just wonder about the parallels between how because history is very subjective, as we've seen in real time. How is Musk going to be regarded historically? Because Howard Hughes was basically, the perception around Howard Hughes is that he was a wealthy, eccentrics being nice, like
Mm-hmm.
he was made out to be a freak
Yeah.
and a weirdo. Maybe he was, but is that the treatment Musk is going to get, and does that bother him? Although I do know he's probably managing that in real time. Walter Isaacson just released a book about Musk.
Yeah. It's my dad's birthday. I got it for him. He's
Yeah,
like, I don't know anything about this guy. I'm like, yeah, but you like Walter Isaacson biographies, so try this one on for size.
yeah. So smart on him, and maybe that's the model that guys like him are executing today, is like get somebody to do it in real time.
I got one sentence to say about Steve Jobs and Elon Musk, and then we can move on.
Okay.
Both of them have a long and well documented history of being really bad people to the people around them for no reason other than for fun or because they just can't control themselves. And those are qualities that I don't care what you did to civilization. I have a really tough time getting past it. I think society is perfectly fine with saying you got to do what you got to do. You got to fight. You got to break a few eggs to make an omelet. Think of all the good they've done to society. I think overall most of us are cool with the good outweighs the bad, and throw in a little bit of everybody's human here and there. But I'm like, it costs you nothing to not be you know cruel to people who aren't you and act like a person, and over and over again you made the choice to uh, be vicious and mean because reasons that escape everyone. It's not the times where it's like Terry's underperforming as the VP of marketing, so I fired him and replaced him. No, that's fine. It's like the Terry is underperforming, so I pooped in his shoe and I left it, for him to step in the morning. Then I laughed at him in a board meeting to prove a point about how he's so dumb that he stepped in a poop shoe. You know what I'm saying? Like that's not a true story, but degrees here, man. Like
Yeah.
I don't need my heroes to be, gangland bully style managers. And all of the good stuff does matter. But I find myself with not so much discounting the good because of those interpersonal traits. It's more like both can be true. This person changed the course of human history and was a bad person. Well, I'm not in a situation to be changing the course of human history unless something really drastic changes in the next couple of years. So I'm not going to do that. But hey, every minute of every day, I can do the other side of this, which is just not be a piece of crap to everybody around me.
I agree. There are multiple. This is one of my first principles: is that there are multiple truths of everything,
Exactly. Duality
and
and that is it's the same concept.
duality and multiple truths. I also think with people, there's a whole bunch of ways that a person can be a bad person, and not being, amicable, or I tend to wonder how much I think of all of it holistically, how much of those stories are blown out of proportion, are taken out of context, or someone was humiliated, maybe unjustly, probably unjustly. I know I've been in situations professionally where I was screamed at in a group one time, and luckily I was raised in that environment, so it didn't phase me. But it was like, for me, it affected me a certain way where I'm wanted to be competitive, not like, oh, I was dejected. But that's a rare response. Most people are, if they get humiliated or undressed publicly, they reacted. So there's that, but then there's also there, there are so many Wolf of Wall Street, it's the reference of the week, Wolf of Wall Street behaving people that we don't know them and don't know their story. I just wonder how much of, there's equivocation, of course, but there are multiple truths. None of us was in the room or present when any of these things happened. There's context missing. Like, until I've witnessed these things, I'm always like, probably that's the case. But for me, it's not like, it doesn't factor into how I evaluate their sort of societal role or the relevance, the importance, the impact that they've had on society. So here's a case study for you. Here's an interesting one. Would you say that Jimmy Swaggart had a big impact on society?
Not personally, because I don't know who that is.
He was a televangelist in the 80s that really was one of him and Jim Baker, and like, those TV televangelists that
Who's the next generation of these guys after?
Olstein, Joel Olstein,
No, somebody came between Jimmy Swagger and Joel Osteen, right?
Kenneth Copeland is another one.
You got the list, man.
I know them all. I know them all. They're,
Pat Robertson. That's who
Pat
I'm thinking
Robertson.
of.
Yeah. Jerry Falwell is another one.
I'm thinking of Pat Robertson, not Jerry Falwell, because Jerry Falwell was on less. Pat Robertson was on TV quicker and more easily accessible, easier to access it on TV than Jerry Falwell. So I knew Pat Robertson more.
Yeah.
Anyway, your question was, did he have a big what impact on society?
Yeah. Those folks, did they, of course, it can be a big impact in the other direction, but did they have a big impact on society? Because those guys were and are in some cases, and their spawn are heroes for a lot of people in this country.
Man, I don't know how to answer that. I, let me pick an easier one.
All right.
Tony Robbins, right? So Tony Robbins, I have to make the same judgment on because I don't want the judgment of Jimmy Swaggart to be, is my issue that organized religion is snake oil, or is this guy legitimate or not? I want to stick with Tony Robbins because I feel like uh the completely non related, the secular advice that Tony Robbins gives and the coaching that Tony Robbins gives, while mostly bland, like I don't really see a lot of downside to the message. You know what I'm saying?
The message isn't for you. And this is one thing I try to keep in mind too, is I see a lot of these self-help types of things, and there are a lot of health, Twitter and there are so many like health people out there, and I like some of them, like Andrew Huberman. Tim Ferriss has a lot of these people on. I've actually learned things from these people, especially around sleep. But I keep in mind, and I'd like for us to talk about audiences sometime. But I keep in mind who the audience is for these people, and they're serving a function. And it's hard for me to understand. It's hard for you to understand because intrinsically you don't have the same voids. You may have other ones, but you also have skills that let you seek out ways to remedy those. That's not the case. A lot of people need Tony Robbins, just like a lot of people need David Goggins, or choose your motivation person,
Right,
because
exactly. So if I'm going to discount Tony Robbins as not being my hero, it's not that he's not my hero because he's telling people he goes around and tells people how great they're doing and helps coach them through how they can feel better about how great they're doing and be realistic about the places where they're not happy with how they're doing. This to me, this is all like, it's pure positive, right? the
so here
negative the negative comes from you're you're paying a quasi celebrity and like subscribing, you're clicking like and subscribe, and you're getting on the new master course, and you're consistently buying into the Tony Robbins machinery, right? The Tony Robbins gets money machine. And like, so my complaints are more about like the commercialization of the advice. If Tony Robbins is just like got a big audience of people that he goes around and does the whole thing for free and tells them that things are great, and the production values are, as big as they need to be able to see him and hear him, and that's the end of it. Now he's like, now he's Gandhi instead of Tony Robbins. But it's the machinery behind it, and it's the why, and it's the question marks about like, is it to help people, or is it because it's a business, or like, where's the, like,
oh
all that crap starts to make it tougher to just definitively say, you know Tony Robbins helped me save my marriage and my finances, and so he's my hero. Like, I can't get to a place where it's simplistic like that for anybody who's like a in the spotlight people helper, even if you can objectively say that they're helping people. Like, I Tim Ferriss, 4 Hour Work Week. I think the 4 Hour Work Week had a huge impact on me because nobody had told me about this idea that you can work less. And I mean, I think I read it with a grain of salt, but I was also like, well, he's not wrong. you know?
Do you do know this? You've been in different places professionally though, but can you appreciate how much fake work there is in corporate America?
I don't need to appreciate it. I'm literally living it. I had a corporate job until I didn't less than a year ago,
Until
and
I did.
the only work I do is work that I want to, or that will directly pay me now, or that I think will pay me later. And I don't do any other work than that. Like nothing ever happens that is work that there's nothing that's assigned to me. There's nothing that is asked of me per se. The flip side of this is if I can't find a place to be financially valuable to somebody else, I don't get paid.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the only flip side. So it's been brought into very clear focus how much time. I think waste is a little bit obvious. I think there's an unobvious answer here, which is it's not waste. It is a systemic spending of time without a whole lot of thought given to it. So it's inefficiency to a point, but it is there to perpetuate a set of the hierarchy of how a company is run and the stability of how a company is run. So that time has potentially crept up over time. I don't know if it has or not, but like the wasted time in corporate jobs exists because
I
of
think it
inertia. It's because of inertia, right?
inertia, but I think it's also it's not important.
Every single person who opens their mouth and is like, I'm too busy for XYZ thing. Every single one of them, every time they do it, from the biggest boss to the lowest boss, every one of those people, every time they say that, is perpetuating a system of busyness versus,
Quality of
productivity or
ideas, yeah.
quality or directness. And if I were to, the fact that you can't in an office setting say, I'm taking a walk to clear my mind and I'll be back in an hour and 15 minutes. And that if you were to say that out loud, you'd be like laughed out of town. I mean, that kind of says all there is to say about it when everyone knows that you can be more productive taking an hour and 15 minutes to take a walk to clear your head. Everybody knows it. But if you were to say it to your boss, they're going to be like, what? What? No, no, you can't do that.
So one final sort of, we've talked about culture all week and the evolution of culture. And I want to talk about this on its own at some point, but I feel like on heroes and like I'm going to dial it back from hero because I don't know that I would ever have a hero, but people that I really respect. I think it's the traits that define that for me, and to each his or her own, but the
Mm-hmm.
traits that define that for me are, obviously intelligence, but aversion to risk, like embracing of risk, not an aversion. Most of
Risk
us are,
loving.
yeah, risk loving. And then I think the other trait that I'm really drawn to, and I think we've distilled this. This is why I wanted to talk about heroes. We've distilled, or we're in the process and have distilled this out of culture, is the notion of individualism, and not individualism from an ego perspective or I am the center of my world, but a self-reliance. And the only thing that I can think of is like the Marlboro Man and cowboys, and that used to be so pervasive in our culture. And I'm not like looking back,
When you
you
say
know
pervasive in our culture, you mean as a real thing or as a story we told ourselves was a thing?
either way it was effective, because that was an aspirational trait for American culture, was to be ruggedly independent and self-reliant and that sort of thing. And maybe all that's natural, but I think the regardless, I think the people who we're talking about, the people who are risk tolerant, risk, embrace risk, really intelligent, they're also rugged individuals. They're rugged, they're self-reliant, they're
Ruggedly individualistic, I think is
rugged,
the
yeah, ruggedly individualistic. And those are, I think three of a tapestry of traits that in a person, if they've got them and they're a mechanic or a technician, and they occur to all, you know, people who start plumbing businesses or open a shop or open a restaurant. You know, they're you don't not everybody has to build Tesla or SpaceX. You know, there are different scales of this, and those people I think have that to certain degrees have that tapestry of traits or characteristics, and I love it. I love those people. I admire those people. The people who are ruggedly individualistic, and you know, when the tide is this way, they're swimming against it, and you know, not just in that hokey conceptual way, but in the way that makes your heart race at 5 o'clock in the morning when you've got so much to do and so much, you know, riding on the success of your day that you've decided to go out individually. I think those are three of many traits that make up, you know, what I would view not as a hero, but as someone that I really respect.
You heard it here first. Rugged individualism.
Yeah, we need those people. And not just for the sake of, you know, there's a fake version of that where it's just contrarian for contrarianism's sake, but like, you know, people who are believe in something and are self-reliant and are going to execute on their ideals.
Well, you've delivered me another existential crisis about what's real, what's imagined, what's a story, and what's lived. It's a great way to take it into the weekend.
Yeah, have a good weekend.
I'm going to come back having hollowed out my psychological core and rebuilt it into a different form.
I want to know what the result was of that marble game over there. That sounded fun.
I'll never tell what happened
That
over there.
that's a track of some sort. It has to be.
No,
Like it's a track, and then the marble.
no, I'll play the sound again another time for you and let you guess again. That's not what it is.
All right,
You'll never guess.
it's like Connect Four or something like
You
that.
No, you're never gonna guess.
I mean, are
Do
they
you know who my
playing?
hero is?
You got a
Honestly,
black
you know who my current hero is? You got to look this lady up. Bobby Altoff. You know who
instant.
she is?
Yeah, she's a podcaster.
My
She's a beautiful woman.
She is so, the character that she plays in her podcast interviews is completely fabricated.
Yeah,
It's amazing. I honestly thought I was watching this person who actually was this dry and this snarky and this, I would say, bold, but it's totally contrived. It's completely a made up character. It's like, you know, Borat versus Sacha Baron Cohen level of just and I was like, I was totally fooled. I was completely convinced that that was just the person we were seeing. And also extremely funny, regardless of whether the guest is in on it or not. Did you see
yeah.
the one with Shaq?
I didn't.
You gotta watch. I only saw the trailer, but you gotta watch the Shaq episode.
Yeah, I'll have to find
The
time.
part when she asks him if he's too heavy for the horse that he bought.
That's
I'm
awesome.
dying. There's another guy, but I can't remember his name. I'll bring him on Monday. Who he had a comedy career, and then he decided to build a persona on TikTok, and it mostly blew up. And I would say that this guy's persona is living the opposite. He's the living embodiment of those, you know, little small win person to person victories that I'm complaining about Steve Jobs and Elon Musk not exhibiting. This guy has made a character to address that societal shortcoming, and therefore that gets him elevated to near hero status for me, just for like starting from a brand new character when he's a stand-up comedian in his, you know, mid to late 40s, and just totally invents a new dude.
Tony Baker might be a hero of mine. Like he's a stand-up comedian that does animal voiceovers on
Uh-huh.
Instagram.
Uh-huh.
Funniest. It's the dude's hilarious. Anyway,
Go watch some stand-up. See you Monday.
I will call you in a little bit.
You got it. The show after the show.
The
Nobody gets to
show
see
after the
that one.
show. Yeah, this is where we hash it out.
Bye, Terry.
Have a good one.